Picture this. You watch your hockey team suck for a year. The players try their best, but it's not good enough. Your coach does dumb things. Your GM says dumb things. From October to April, you go to bed upset approximately 50 times. And after all of this, there's finally light at the end of the tunnel. But the one thing standing in your way is a bald guy opening envelopes. This is the reality of the NHL Draft system. The NHL Draft is an annual event where teams select 17 and 18-year-old players to join their franchises. The draft order is designed to be the inverse of the standings. The worst teams get the earlier selections, and the best teams pick later. However, this isn't completely true. Before the draft, there's a lottery that often jumbles up the selection order slightly. Each team is assigned a set of 4 number combinations. 4 numbered lottery balls are then drawn randomly from a machine, and the team that has that combination of balls wins the lottery and picks slightly higher than they would have otherwise. The worse a team is, the more combinations they have, and the more likely they are to win the lottery. This system is in place to prevent teams from intentionally losing games to improve their draft position, and it has been in place since 1995. In the last 30 years, there have been numerous changes to the structure, odds, or presentation of the lottery. Sometimes one pick is up for grabs, sometimes more are up for grabs, sometimes everyone can win first overall, sometimes only a few teams can. Sometimes they do hilarious lottery reveal shows where they make the old men running these teams fly to Toronto and sit in the same room together. Sometimes they just let them do it via Zoom call. Today, we're going to look at all of the variations of the draft lottery and mathematically determine which teams have had the best and worst lottery luck since 1995. Before looking at the entire history of the draft lottery, I will quickly describe how I'm going to calculate the luckiest lottery team. Before each draft lottery, the odds for each team are published like this, with the worst teams having better odds to win the lottery. These odds are always listed as percent chances like this. These odds are going to be the backbone of our calculation, but we're going to convert them to probabilities, which are the decimal form of a percent chance. To make this conversion, all we have to do is divide the percent chance by 100. So, for example, in probability form, all of these odds would be listed like this. In mathematics, probability notation is very popular because it lends itself better to more complicated calculations than percent chances do. One common usage of probability is calculating expected values. The expected value is defined as the sum of each possible outcome multiplied by the probability of that outcome happening. In the context of the draft lottery, we can calculate a team's expected pick by using a formula like this. 1 times the probability of getting pick 1, plus 2 times the probability of getting pick 2, plus 3 times the probability of getting pick 3, and so on, for every possible pick that team can have. Then, you could compare the actual results from the draft lottery to that team's expected pick. What we can do is calculate something known as the team's pick above expected. This can be obtained by taking the actual pick that team got in the draft lottery minus the expected pick they had going into the draft lottery. If the team's real selection is significantly higher than its expected selection, it means they got pretty lucky. If it's lower, it means they didn't get very lucky. So, if we were to look at the past 30 years and see how every team's actual selection compared to their expected selection, we might be able to identify the lucky and the unlucky teams. However, the one thing that this wouldn't account for is the quality of the picks involved. Pick value is not linear. The difference between consecutive picks is much higher at the top of the draft. Moving up from pick 11 to pick 7, for example, is not going to have nearly the impact that moving up from pick 5 to pick 1 would. So, to account for this, instead of calculating the expected pick, we're going to calculate the expected pick value. I am going to assign each draft slot a corresponding pick value, all of which I have obtained from this 2023 article from The Athletic. Here is a table showing the pick value of each selection. So, we're going to calculate the expected pick value for each team. This means that in place of using this formula that we talked about earlier, we will replace the pick number with the pick value, and now our calculation will look something like this. 17.7, the pick value of the first overall pick, times the probability of the first overall pick, plus 12.3, the pick value of the second pick, times the probability of that team getting the second pick, plus 10.2, the pick value of the third overall pick, times the probability of pick 3, and so on. We're going to add up the pick value times the pick probability for every possible pick. Then, if we compared the expected pick value to the actual pick value for each team, we should be able to have a good idea of who's gotten lucky and who has not. So, all we need to do at this point is look at every lottery and calculate the pick probabilities for every team. Before we start, I'm going to make one small note about traded draft picks. We're going to see a few draft picks that were traded conditionally. For each conditionally traded pick, I am considering the pick to be in the possession of the team that would hold the pick in the case of a lottery win. So, let's start by looking at the very first draft lottery, in 1995. In 1995, the 10 non-playoff teams participated in the draft lottery. In order from the worst to best, these teams were the Senators, Islanders, Ducks, Lightning, Oilers, Jets, Kings, Canadiens, Bruins, and Panthers. The worse a team is, the higher their lottery seed is. This means that the worst teams are the most likely to win the lottery and will be the highest picking if the lottery doesn't change the draft order at all. There was exactly one lottery draw this year, and these were the odds that each team had of winning the lottery. Teams could only move up to 4 spots higher, meaning that only the bottom 5 teams could win the first overall pick. It's great that we know the probability for each team to win the lottery, but we want to find the full probability table, the probability of each team getting each pick. For this lottery, this is actually quite easy to calculate. For each team, there are only 2 or 3 possible places they can pick. They can win the lottery and move up, they can stay at the lottery seed they were at before the draft lottery, or they can get bumped down 1 spot if a team lower than them in the standings wins the lottery. For any team, their probability of picking lower than their seed will just be the combined lottery win probability of the first 4 teams below that team's lottery seed. If there are less than 4 teams below the team's lottery seed, then it'll just be the combined lottery win probability of however many teams there are below the lottery seed. Now, for each team, we have the probability of being bumped down 1 spot and the probability of winning the lottery. The only thing we need to find now is the probability of each team staying in their lottery seed, so no movement with their pick. And for this, we can use something known as the complement rule. The complement rule states that the probability of something happening is equal to 1 minus the probability of that thing not happening. We know that a team will not pick at their lottery seed if they move up or move down. So, for each team, we can calculate their staying put probability by calculating 1 minus the probability of winning the lottery minus the probability of moving down in the lottery. And if we do that for every team, our table looks something like this. So, what we can do now is take the sum of each pick value multiplied by its pick probability. For example, this is what Ottawa's would look like. 17.7, the pick value of first overall, times 0.45, the probability of Ottawa receiving first overall, plus 12.3, the pick value of second overall, times 0.55, the probability of Ottawa receiving second overall. The probability of Ottawa receiving any other pick value is 0, so our calculations don't include anything beyond these 2. If we crunch these numbers, it equals 14.73. Then we could do something similar for every other team partaking in the 1995 draft lottery. This is what the numbers would look like. And now, our next step is to look at the real draft lottery results. LA ended up winning this lottery and moving from the 7th pick to the 4th pick. This was the final draft order, and if we take the pick value above expected, this is what every team looks like. LA was obviously quite lucky to win this lottery, but Ottawa was also considered lucky for retaining the first overall selection. Now, we have to do this for every draft in the last 30 years. I'm going to fly through the next few years because the process will be very similar to the 1995 lottery. In 1996, Ottawa ended up winning the draft lottery and retaining their first overall selection. Here's what the table looked like. In 1997, the last place Boston Bruins won the lottery, retaining their first overall selection that they used to draft Joe Thornton. 1998's draft lottery was slightly different, due to the Nashville Predators being introduced to the league and being given the second best odds. But the structure of the lottery remained very similar. The pick belonging to the San Jose Sharks won the lottery, but the pick was transferred to Tampa Bay due to conditions from a previous trade, where Tampa would get the higher of their own pick in San Jose's, and San Jose would get the lower one. It's debatable whether or not I should consider this lottery-winning pick to be in Tampa's possession, but I am. The Atlanta Thrashers were introduced in 1999 and were automatically given the second best odds. The table looked like this. The Chicago Blackhawks won, bumping themselves up from pick 8 to pick 4, but the Tampa Bay Lightning retained the first overall selection. The expansion process continued as 2 new teams, the Minnesota Wild and the Columbus Blue Jackets, were introduced in 2000. Both were tied as having the second best odds. The New York Islanders ended up winning this draft lottery, moving up from pick 5 to pick 1. The lotteries from 2001 to 2004 had the exact same probability table. Atlanta won and moved from pick 3 to pick 1 in 2001. Florida won and moved from pick 3 to pick 1 in 2002. Florida won again and moved from pick 4 to pick 1 in 2003, and Washington won and moved from pick 3 to pick 1 in 2004, giving them the ability to draft Alexander Ovechkin. The 2005 lottery is without a doubt the most interesting one in NHL history. Because there was no NHL season in 2005, the entire first round, all picks from 1 to 30, were randomized. The NHL Draft Lottery, and order in general, is based on the standings of the previous seasons, but since there was no previous season, the NHL had to determine all of the picks through a lottery, and the intensity of this lottery was magnified, because Sidney Crosby, arguably the most hyped prospect of all time, was eligible for the draft. There were a total of 48 lottery balls used here, and the amount of lottery balls that each team got depended on a few factors from previous years. 3 lottery balls were given to the teams that had 0 first overall picks in the last 4 drafts, and 0 playoff appearances in the last 3 seasons. The only teams to fit this criteria were the Penguins, Blue Jackets, Sabres, and Rangers. Each team in this group had a first overall pick probability of 0.063 or a 6.3% chance. Teams with either 1 playoff appearance or 1 first overall pick in the same time frame were given 2 lottery balls. These teams were the Ducks, Thrashers, Flames, Hurricanes, Blackhawks, Oilers, Kings, Wild, Predators, and Coyotes. Each team in this group had a first overall pick probability of 0.042 or a 4.2% chance. Every other team in the league was given 1 lottery ball. The teams with 1 ball had a 2.1% chance of winning the first overall pick. So, we know the probability of each team getting the first overall pick, but to calculate the expected pick value, we need to know every team's probability of getting every pick. However, with such a massive draft with so many different variables at hand, calculating probabilities like this would be extremely difficult, so we can use something known as Monte Carlo experimentation to estimate the probabilities. The idea here is that if we simulate this lottery a very, very large amount of times, we can record how often each team got each pick, and the proportion of times each team will get each pick will be very similar to the probability of the team getting that pick. This is due to the law of averages. So what I did to estimate the probabilities here was design a code which simulated the 2005 lottery 8 million times, and record the distribution of each draft pick. And the results are here. These technically aren't perfect approximations of the pick probabilities, as the probability table for teams with the same number of balls should be identical, but it's very close. I'm not going to summarize every single thing that happened in this lottery, but here is the draft order. Pittsburgh won the first overall pick, giving them an astonishing pick value above expected of 10.475. Montreal, Anaheim, and Carolina all had very good luck, while the Sabres, Rangers, and Flames did not. But, from 2006 to 2012, the NHL kept the same lottery system that they had from 1995 to 2004, so we'll do a rapid-fire analysis here. In 2006, the last place St. Louis Blues won the lottery and retained their first overall selection. In 2007, the Chicago Blackhawks won the lottery, moving up from the 5th pick to the 1st pick. They ended up selecting Patrick Kane. For the last place Philadelphia Flyers, this was a devastating lottery loss. They got bumped down from the 1st pick to the 2nd pick. Though they selected James Van Riemsdyk, a decent player in his own right, Patrick Kane was clearly the best player in this draft. And just 3 years later, the Flyers ended up losing in the Stanley Cup Finals to the Chicago Blackhawks, off an overtime goal scored by Patrick Kane. In 2008, Tampa Bay won the lottery, retaining their first overall pick. In 2009, the New York Islanders won the lottery, and they kept their first overall pick. In 2010, the Edmonton Oilers won the lottery, and maintained their first overall selection. 3 of the last 4 lotteries have resulted in no change to the draft order, and the idea that this lottery is preventing tanking is certainly suspect. In 2011, the New Jersey Devils won the lottery, propelling them from 8th overall to 4th overall. Although the last place Oilers didn't win this lottery, they maintained their first overall selection. 2012 was the last lottery of this general format. The Edmonton Oilers, originally slated to pick 2nd, won the first overall pick. This marked their 3rd straight year picking 1st. From 2013 to 2015, the lottery underwent one minor change. Before 2013, teams could only move up 4 spots. Now, every team participating in the lottery could obtain the first overall pick. So, our probability table will look a little bit different here. Teams can either pick first overall, stay at their original lottery seed, or get bumped down if a team below their lottery seed wins. In 2013, the Colorado Avalanche, originally slated to pick 2nd, won the lottery and selected Nathan MacKinnon. The 2014 lottery was very similar, but there was one small adjustment to the probabilities. Instead of all 14 of the non-playoff teams having a chance to win the first overall pick, there were actually only 13. The New Jersey Devils were punished for cap circumvention in 2010, and this led to the Devils being forced to have the last pick in the 2014 first round. They still did participate in the draft lottery, but if they won, there would be a redraw. I thought that this would be another good draft to determine the probabilities with Monte Carlo experimentation. Here are the proportions I found, which we're going to use as the probabilities for our expected pick value calculations. The Florida Panthers, originally scheduled to pick second, ended up winning the lottery and picking first overall. Here is what our entire table looked like for the 2014 draft. 2015's draft lottery was absolutely enormous. Connor McDavid was the best prospect since Sidney Crosby, and the Buffalo Sabres and Arizona Coyotes were pretty blatantly tanking in an attempt to get the best draft odds. However, the Edmonton Oilers won the lottery and moved up from the third overall pick to the first overall selection. The NHL fanbase reacted to this very calmly. The next major change to the lottery occurred prior to the 2016 season. Instead of the first overall pick being available, all of the top 3 picks were now up for grabs. Teams could now fall 3 spots in the draft lottery, and the last place team in the league had less than a 1 in 4 chance of retaining the first overall pick. This made the probability table much more interesting. In the 2016 lottery, the Toronto Maple Leafs maintained their first overall selection. The Jets moved up from 6 to 2, and the Blue Jackets moved up from 4 to 3. Edmonton and Vancouver both fell 2 spots. 2017's lottery was arguably the most chaotic of all time. First off, this was the first lottery that the Vegas Golden Knights participated in, and they were automatically given the 3rd seed and the 3rd best odds. But this has nothing to do with why this lottery was weird. The first overall pick was won by the New Jersey Devils, originally slated to pick 5th. The second overall pick was won by the Philadelphia Flyers, originally slated to pick 13th. And the third overall pick was won by the Dallas Stars, the team with the 9th best lottery odds. The teams with the 1st, 2nd, 3rd, and 4th best odds all dropped 3 spots. Lotteries like this are much more practical if the goal is to stop teams from intentionally losing games. 2018's lottery wasn't quite as kooky, but there was still one major jump, with the Carolina Hurricanes jumping from the 11th pick to the 2nd overall pick. Montreal moved up from the 4th pick to the 3rd pick, and Buffalo kept their first overall selection. In 2019, the Blackhawks moved up from 12th to 3rd. The Rangers moved up from 6th to 2nd, and the Devils moved up from 3rd to 1st. This was another lottery, where multiple teams, the Colorado Avalanche and the Los Angeles Kings, dropped 3 spots. Due to the pandemic, 2020's lottery was a little strange. The NHL season abruptly shut down in March of 2020. The league eventually did form a plan to return to action, a playoff-style tournament between the top 24 teams in the league. But this messed up the lottery. The bottom 7 NHL teams were all officially eliminated from the playoffs and were participating in the lottery. However, the teams occupying the 8th to 15th lottery seeds would be those who lost in the play-in round of the 24-team tournament. What the league ended up doing was holding a lottery with the bottom 7 teams and 8 placeholder teams yet to be determined. Then, if any of the placeholder teams won a lottery, there would be another lottery featuring all of the teams eliminated in that play-in round. These teams all had the same odds for that lottery pick, but their draft position otherwise would just be the inverse of the regular season. Here, I assumed that all 8 of the teams eliminated in the play-in round were already eliminated from the playoffs and participating in the lottery, even though that isn't actually what happened in real time. This was another lottery where I estimated the probabilities using Monte Carlo methods, and this is what the table looked like for 2020. Funnily enough, a placeholder team, titled Team E, ended up winning the first overall selection, and in August of that year, a second lottery took place, where all of the play-in losers had a chance for the first overall pick. The New York Rangers ended up being the winners. The LA Kings moved up from the 4th overall pick to the 2nd overall pick, and the Ottawa Senators, with a pick acquired from San Jose, ended up winning the 3rd overall selection. 2021 saw a few changes to the lottery system and the odds. Firstly, there were now 16 teams participating rather than 15, due to the Seattle Kraken entering the league. But, instead of 3 picks being available, only 2 were. This was another lottery that involved a forfeited draft pick. Due to violating the NHL's combine testing policy, the Arizona Coyotes were ineligible to receive the first overall pick, and a redraw would occur anytime Arizona won. This was another lottery where I approximated the probabilities by using a simulation. In this year, the last place Buffalo Sabres won the first overall pick, and the Seattle Kraken, originally scheduled to pick 3rd, moved up to 2nd overall. And in 2022, the lottery underwent one more change. There were 2 lotteries, but teams could only move up 10 spots. This was more favorable to the bad teams. In 2022, Montreal won the lottery, and retained their first overall pick, while New Jersey moved up from 5th to 1st. 2023 was a massive year, given that Connor Bedard was the most hyped prospect since Connor McDavid in 2015. The Blackhawks, originally scheduled to pick 3rd, ended up picking 1st in drafting Bedard. And the last place Ducks won the 2nd lottery, so they were bumped down from 1st to 2nd. 2024 was a very boring lottery. The last place Sharks won the 1st overall pick, and the 2nd last place Chicago Blackhawks won the 2nd overall pick. 2025, the most recent lottery as of this video, was pretty funky. The Islanders, originally scheduled to pick 10th, moved all the way up to 1st, and the Utah Mammoth, originally scheduled to pick 14th, moved all the way up to 4th. So yeah, that's a summary of every single NHL lottery that has happened. But which teams got the luckiest? Which ones got the unluckiest? What I did here was I took each team and added up all of their pick value above expecteds across each lottery in the last 30 years, and compared all of these teams to see who had the best luck and who had the worst luck across these 30 years of draft lotteries. I'm about to show what I found. Take a guess who the luckiest teams were in the comments. Here is the entire chart, showing which teams have benefited most from the lottery and which teams have been screwed over the most by it. The unlucky teams are on the left, and the lucky teams are on the right. And it's pretty much what I expected. Chicago has easily had the best lottery luck since 1995. The Devils, Panthers, Islanders, and Rangers have also been quite fortunate. The one obvious flaw with my calculations is that it didn't differentiate between the value of each first overall pick. After all, some first overall picks are just better than others. If I did do something that accounted for the pick value, I would suspect that Pittsburgh and Edmonton would rank much higher. To the surprise of nobody, Arizona, Columbus, Detroit, Nashville, and Vancouver have all had terrible luck in the draft lottery. In terms of individual lotteries, the 2025 New York Islanders had the luckiest result, with a pick value above expected of 11.119. On the other hand, the 2005 Calgary Flames had the worst result, going from an expected pick value of around 6.3, so about the 9th overall pick, to an actual pick value of 3.3, which was the 26th overall pick. This was a really fun experiment to do. The lottery is a really cool concept, and it's interesting to see how it's changed and who has benefited the most from it throughout the years. It would be cool if I could do a similar experiment with another sports league that had a lottery.